All right, everyone, thank you so very much for being here. It is my pleasure to call to order the 2023 annual meeting of the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. So my name is Rachel Fisher, and I'm the designated federal official as well as the acting executive director for this esteemed group. And I would really just like to welcome our amazing council members, my federal colleagues, all of you in the audience, as well as those of you watching from home today. The President's Council is a federal advisory committee whose members are appointed by the President of the United States to engage, to educate, and to empower all Americans to adopt a healthy lifestyle that includes regular physical activity and good nutrition. We have long awaited the appointment of these individuals that you see. Whoops, can we put up the slide with the, or do I have a? Well, the members you see here before me today, their names are on a slide somewhere. Is there a clicker? We have 20 of the 29 council members with us here today, and we have 3 of them who are participating virtually. Each of these members will have an opportunity to introduce themselves to you, and they will also have an opportunity to discuss the priorities that they will move forward with this council. At this point, I would like to welcome Admiral Rachel Levine, the 17th Assistant Secretary of Health for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the head of the U.S. Public Health Commission Corps, to the stand. Admiral Levine's storied career, first as a physician in academic medicine, focused on the intersection between mental and physical health, treating children, adolescents, and young adults. Then as Pennsylvania's physician general and later as Pennsylvania's Secretary of Health, she addressed COVID-19, the opioid crisis, behavioral health, and other public health challenges. And I would very much like to welcome her to give you some opening remarks. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Rachel, for that kind introduction. And it is certainly my pleasure to welcome all of you to the first meeting of the Biden-Harris President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. It's very exciting. I am very enthusiastic to have an incredibly diverse and impressive council as ambassadors dedicated to improving the health of our nation.
I'm interrupting you, so sorry.
That's okay. This council is comprised of renowned changemakers working across industries, including sports and fitness and food access, business and health, each working toward a common goal, improving access to healthy foods and opportunities for physical activity. As our nation rebounds from the acute phase of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is much work that remains to be done to improve our health and to achieve health equity. 2 of the most pressing issues is addressing the significant impact of chronic diseases and improving our nation's mental health. Chronic diseases are among the leading causes of death and disability in the United States, and the statistics are sobering. 6 in 10 Americans live with at least one chronic disease, such as heart disease and stroke, cancer, or diabetes. These and other chronic diseases are the leading causes of death and disability in America, and they are also the leading driver of healthcare costs. Additionally, our nation's youth are struggling with their mental health. More than 1 in 3 United States high school students experienced poor mental health during the pandemic, and nearly half of students felt persistently sad or hopeless. I know these statistics may seem daunting, but there is hope. Access to physical activity opportunities and good nutrition can help prevent and manage many chronic diseases and support people's mental, emotional, and social well-being. For example, sports not only provide an important way for young people to get the physical activity that they need each week, but participation in sports can help youth do better in school, develop important life and social skills, and have improved mental health and self-esteem. But not all youth have access to the same benefits. We know that girls, racial and ethnic communities, youth from low-income neighborhoods, and youth with disabilities are less likely to have access to sports. And these health disparities aren't limited to our nation's youth. Too many Americans lack access to safe spaces to be physically active, and they face disparities in access to other services and supports that foster food security, nutritional security, healthy eating, and physical activity. But despite these challenges, I remain a positive and optimistic person because of the work of the Biden-Harris administration. Last September, President Biden hosted the White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health, a historic event that brought together members of government, the private sector, anti-hunger and nutrition advocates, civil society, and the public. The conference catalyzed action for millions of Americans struggling with food and nutritional insecurity and diet-related diseases such as diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. At the conference, the President released the National Strategy on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health, which outlines a whole-of-government transformational vision for ending hunger, increasing healthy eating, and physical activity by 2030. Achieving this goal will take more than the effort of the federal government, and the White House issued a call to action for the public and private sector to commit to supporting this effort. This council will play a key role in helping us execute this strategy by building partnerships and educating the public about the power of physical activity and healthy eating. The council will not be alone in this effort. They will have the full support of our Office of Health Promotion and Disease Prevention, which creates policy, guidance, and tools to encourage Americans to lead healthier lives. Our office also serves as the lead for creating the physical activity guidelines for Americans, which lays the foundation for how much and what types of physical activity Americans need to promote health and reduce the risk of chronic disease. And I am pleased to release the Physical Activities Guideline for Americans' Mid-Course Report Implementation Strategies for older adults, of which I am one at 65 years old. This report was called for in the National Strategy under Pillar 4, Support Physical Activity for All, and I'm very pleased to share this important report with you, along with actionable strategies that we all can take to increase physical activity among older adults like me. Between editions of the guidelines, HHS releases a mid-course report that builds on those guidelines and highlights evidence-based strategies that can help more Americans get the physical activity that they need to get and to stay healthy. Today, we are excited to release the mid-course report that is focused on older adults. By the year 2030, 1 in every 5 Americans will be aged 65 and older. Although older Americans currently are the least physically active of any age group, it is never too late to start being active. Helping older adults become more active will require a comprehensive and coordinated effort. The Physical Activity Guidelines Mid-Course Report will support us in our efforts and further our mission to create our vision of healthy people, healthy communities, and a healthy nation for all. Promoting physical activity is not just an individual responsibility, but everyone has a role to play. This report is for policymakers, exercise and health professionals, clinicians, gerontologists, built environment professionals, local, state, territorial, and tribal leaders, and others that are working with older adults. It's a guide to help those groups implement individual and community-level strategies that support physical activity among older adults. All working together, we can create environments where being physically active, as well as having healthy food options, is actually the easy choice. So I'm very eager to hear how federal government works hand in hand with you all, our President's Council, and other public-private partnerships to drive transformational change. As you kick off your meeting today, I want to thank you for your service, and I look forward to working together to educate, engage, and empower all Americans to adopt a healthy lifestyle that includes regular physical activities and good nutrition. Thank you for Jose and Elena and all of this esteemed group, and I really look forward to your work. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm back, and this time I have the clicker, so we're good. Thank you, Admiral Levine, so much for all that you do in your role to advance the health of America. We are very pleased to work under your service. All right, so it is my opportunity now to give some remarks on behalf of the Executive Director and to to just share a little bit about where the council's been and where it's going and how it's evolved over time. I think looking back at the things that the council has done will help us look to these individuals for the future and the things that they are going to do moving forward. So I just wanted to start at the very beginning. So the council was established in 1956. It was as a national security issue in response to a study that looked at the comparison of American children and European children and showed that American children were less fit than their European counterparts. So President Eisenhower tapped his cabinet secretaries to be the inaugural council. And the primary objective of the council was to be a catalytic agent to create public awareness about the importance of physical fitness, especially for youth. Under the Kennedy administration, the scope of the council was expanded to encompass all age groups, not just youth. So with the aid of the Advertising Council, they created a national publicity campaign on physical fitness. Material was produced for print, radio, television, and display advertising, and some of these flyers from that promotional campaign are there on the slide. But despite having an expanded scope, physical fitness in schools remained a high priority. The council developed and promoted a curriculum to improve fitness in schools. Part of this curriculum included a theme song, and I really wish I had this theme song here with me today to play for you because it is called Go Chicken Fat Go. And I highly recommend all of you to look for it on YouTube. There are videos of it where they have individuals. It's a song that takes you through 11 different floor exercises. It's about 6 minutes long, and it was made into a record that was sent to every elementary, middle, and high school in the country. So I don't know if any of you here today remember that song, but next time I see you, I hope you've listened to it, and it's entertaining. If you want to find it, you can, I forgot that was in here. You can take a picture. For those of you at home, at the break, while we're all standing here, you can do the Go Chicken Fat Go exercise from your, wherever you're watching, your office or your home. So the scope of the council continued to evolve under the Johnson administration. It was under this administration that the name changed to incorporate sports. So President Johnson was a strong believer in the positive benefits of organized sports and games, and he believed that they could be part of an active lifestyle no matter what the age of the individual. And to further emphasize that physical fitness could be fun and rewarding, they created the Presidential Fitness Award Program. And this created goals and incentives for youth in school to excel in physical fitness. Now, this program has been around since the 60s. The name and the battery of tests done under this program has changed over time. But, you know, people could earn a patch for achieving these milestones. So I would just like to take a quick moment, and everyone in this room who earned a patch for the physical fitness test in their school, if you could raise your hand. And later today, you will hear from Sherry Siapka, the director of the National Fitness Foundation, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about the evolution of this program and where we're going from there. So to continue emphasizing the importance of making fitness fun, President Nixon started a new trend of appointing council whose membership comprised of national celebrities and famous athletes. And this was a change that was strongly supported by physical educators, health and fitness organizations, and sports professionals. And one of the initial celebrities that was co-chair of the council, you might all remember, is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so when many people think of the President's Council, that is often who they think of. When he was the chair of the council, he visited all 50 states to advocate for daily quality physical education. The council also initiated the Great American Workout, and they did a lot of workouts on the White House lawn to motivate America. And in 2010, under the Obama administration, nutrition was added to the council's name. And this was to include a focus of healthy eating in addition to active lifestyles, understanding that the two go hand in hand and we can't have one without the other, which was a very important evolution. And the President's Council at that time was charged with advising the President through the Secretary of Health and Human Services about opportunities to develop accessible, affordable, and sustainable physical activity, fitness, sports, and nutrition programs for all Americans, regardless of the age, background, or ability. And under the Trump administration, a renewed focus on youth sports was part of the council's charge. So at that time, the council moved into the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, and they, in conjunction with the council, released the National Youth Sports Strategy, which was to unite the U.S. youth sports culture around a shared vision that one day all youth will have the opportunity, motivation, and access to play sports. And this continues to be a huge priority for the council. So this brings us to today. The council's mission, as I mentioned earlier, is to engage, to educate, and to empower all Americans to lead a healthy lifestyle that includes regular physical activity and good nutrition. The President's Council is authorized through an executive order which comes out every 2 years. And this gives each administration an opportunity to lay out the priorities of the time and what they hope their council will achieve. And so the most recent executive order for which this council is convened under was released in September of 2021. And so priorities that were in that executive order are to increase awareness of the benefits and participation in sports, regular physical activity, as well as the importance of good nutrition, as well as to promote public and private strategies to increase these things, as well, and importantly, to expand national awareness about the importance of mental health as it relates to physical fitness and nutrition. Since that the executive order was released in 2021, there have been additional emerging priorities for which this council will focus on. And as you've heard others speak about today, and Admiral Levine mentioned in her remarks, in September of 2022, the Biden-Harris administration convened the White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. And the goal of this conference was to outline a path forward to end hunger and to increase healthy eating and physical activity by 2030 to reduce diet-related diseases. They also released a national strategy at the same time, which laid out a number of actions for the federal government, as well as a call to action for all sectors of society. And this priority is reflected in the makeup of this council here today. There are 5 pillars in which the national strategy was focused on. The first is to improve food access and affordability. The second is to integrate nutrition and health. The third pillar is to empower all consumers to make and have access to healthy choices. Pillar 4 is to support physical activity for all. And Pillar 5 is to enhance nutrition and food security research. And these are meant to be actions that can be taken by all parts of society: the federal government, local, state, and territory, tribal governments, nonprofit and community groups, as well as private companies. And the collective expertise represented on this council will be a very valuable resource to the administration in implementing this national strategy, as well as supporting the White House challenge to end hunger and build healthier communities, which Admiral Levine mentioned. So in summary, the President's Council promotes healthy eating and physical activity for everyone, everywhere, no matter what their background or ability is. And later you will hear from the members of this council as they discuss their priorities and how they would like to approach fulfilling this council's mission. But now you are going to hear from a panel of senior leaders from across the federal government, including the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Agriculture, the National Park Service, and the Department of Transportation. They will share their thoughts on how they can work with the President's Council to inspire people to lead healthier lives. The panel will be moderated by Admiral Paul Reed, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Health, the Director of the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, a pediatrician, a senior U.S. Public Health Service officer. Admiral Reed provides direction and oversight for national health initiatives such as Healthy People 2030, the Dietary Guidelines for Americans, the Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans, and the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. So I'd very much like to invite our federal panelists to come up and join on the stage right here.
The microphone's on. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. Thank you. We'll pass one back. Okay. It's good to be here in front of you all today. This day's been a long time in coming. I'm particularly very thrilled to see you all in those chairs right in front of me at the President's Council. So we have 4 esteemed colleagues from very diverse departments from across the interagency who I want to ask a few questions of, but before I do that, I'm going to ask them each to offer their own individual remarks about how they feel the President's Council can be best be leveraged to support the physical activity and the nutrition-related activities that their respective departments are involved with. Now, mind you, each of these individuals represent departments with very interesting and diverse portfolios, so it should be intriguing to hear how they relate to this particular question. I'll start with Karen Hacker. Karen directs the CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, a near and dear counterpart to our office here at HHS in the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Health. So Karen, we'll start with you. And if you want to take a second just to also offer a little bit of your personal background and what that brings to the perspective you bear.
Sure. So hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with all of you. As someone who basically is living in Atlanta, we don't get into Washington that much, and lately it seems that there's a lot of convening going on post-pandemic, which is quite lovely to see people in person who I've met on Zoom or Teams or something like that. At the National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, you can only imagine how all of these things are critically important to the work that we do. We have divisions that focus on diabetes and heart disease and cancer, but we also have a division that focuses on nutrition and obesity and physical activity, as well as a number of others. But those are such fundamental, critical areas to prevention of the other major diseases that we're talking about. And I think one of the things in the recent conference was really talking about these as nutrition-related disorders. I thought that was a wonderful way of really framing that. We have been deeply involved in supporting the field. We give out over $800 million in grants every year to the field, mostly to state and local health departments. And much of those resources are to prevent these conditions, and in some cases they're specifically focused on obesity prevention, on physical activity, built environment, things like that. Of late, one of the most important things I think we've been really focused on is this area called social determinants of health. And in that, we do talk about the built environment, we talk about the food environment as well as 2 areas that are really need to be addressed in order to get us towards health equity. On a personal note, so I spent my entire career up until 2019 in the field, and I worked in local public health. I was a local public health director. I worked in community engagement areas and things like that. And so I was able to actually see in real time what was going on in communities and how important it is for us all to really work together to be able to achieve these goals. Not one of our organizations, not one of our agencies can do this work by themselves. So I think if there's one thing I'd want to say to the council is that we really need you to support and amplify the messages that we are putting out to communities, and they need that from you as well. Because let's face it, I sometimes think of physical activity like, who doesn't like physical activity, right? It's kind of like ma and apple pie, right? It's very bipartisan, which is great, but the problem then is that it tends to slip. It doesn't get on the priority hit parade all the time. And so our question really is, how do we move it into that priority area to remind people how critically important it is? We are very engaged, for example, in our center in supporting the Active People, Healthy Nation, and really bringing people into that fold. And that is, again, I think something that the council can really be helpful in really creating the interest in those kinds of activities and keeping the focus, because again, I think over time it's very easy for these things to sort of fade out of the consciousness. I think that's it for me.
Great, thank you, Karen. Appreciate it. Next, I'll introduce Emily Schweninger, who's the Senior Policy Advisor for Transportation, Health, and Safety at the Department of Transportation. And again, to start off, if you could just offer a little bit of your personal perspective and then how the Department of Transportation values the potential that the President's Council represents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thanks for this opportunity to be here and speak with you all and enjoy that lovely meal that we just had. Very excited about what we have in front of us and being able to participate in this strategy. With the Department of Transportation, we're very much focused on what opportunities we have in front of us with the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure law, and all the investments that are going to be made. I appreciated some of the comments from Karen here because my background is in public health. I was a public health professional for many years, very focused, continue to consider myself one, of course, but the social determinants of health is a critical way for us to be addressing all of these issues. And when we think about the built environment, you know, and what we're going to do as far as getting people more physically active, be able to access nutritious foods, other pieces along those lines, a lot of what we're seeing as far as disparities and the undue burden in some communities is based on the way that communities have been built, and some of the solution lies there within. So as we're making these enormous investments through the bipartisan infrastructure law, we're thinking critically not only about where disproportionate impacts are happening, whether they are around safety, whether they're around physical activity and health outcomes, and how we can be making those considerations and thinking through, as we're making those investments, how we can do better and make more opportunities for active transportation, building communities where land use decisions, housing decisions, the zoning, all of that planning, along with transportation connections that are safe for people to walk, bike, and roll. This is how we're going to build a place where we're going to have more opportunities for older adults, younger children, and everybody in between to be more physically active. I think it's really important for us to think about taking the concept of physical activity, not leaving it in the gym or leaving it for that 30 minutes a day where it's a very focused effort, but adding in all the ways that we're moving about our day. And so all those ways that we can be walking, biking, rolling as we move through the world to our everyday destinations, if we're going to school, to work, to the grocery store, to the pharmacy, every step, as we all count, really matters. And so more and more, that cross-sectoral collaboration that you mentioned, I just want to sing that in the choir here, that, we have this opportunity through the council and through your leadership to be thinking about, and I think that the strategy that was developed did just that with the pillars and looking across the agencies, what can we do at the federal level to make sure that we're coordinating? But even more importantly, how can we be supporting decisions that are being made at the local level to be coordinating as well? And so that's why having perspectives like yours and others who are here who've been working at all these levels, including with our other stakeholders, if it's private industry and others, we're doing that work with the National Roadway Safety Strategy and bringing together stakeholders from across the transportation space to make sure that everybody's part of that conversation and sees themselves in that solution. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Again, thank you, Emily. Next is Cindy Long. She's an administrator from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Food and Nutrition Service. And Cindy, I'll ask you to, again, offer some personal thoughts from your background on this, as well as that of the USDA.
Great. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here to discuss how the Council can amplify the federal government's efforts around sports nutrition and health. So I'm with the Food and Nutrition Service, and as the name would imply, we are responsible for operating all of the domestic nutrition assistance programs. So that would include SNAP, which you might know as food stamps, the School Lunch and Breakfast Program, and the WIC program, as well as a number of others. These programs have historically had a mission of combating hunger and food insecurity in the U.S. And in the Biden-Harris administration, we, of course, are continuing with that mission, but we're also expanding it to include the advancement of nutrition security. And what we mean by nutrition security, put very simply, is that every American should have the ability to obtain enough healthy, safe, and affordable food to support a diet that will support optimal health and well-being. And that should be true no matter who you are or where you live. So we think there are just a number of opportunities for the council to help amplify, build support, and lift up the amazing tools that these nutrition programs can be. And I just wanted to mention 3 particular opportunities that are present right now at this point in time. The first has to do with healthy school meals for all. This was a primary goal for USDA that came out of the White House conference. And what that means is that it's an approach that we were able to test during the pandemic, where schools across the country were able to provide school meals to children without worrying about means testing and taking applications and who pays what. They just provided healthy lunch and breakfast to everyone in school. Now, there is plenty of research over time that shows the benefits of this approach for things like academic achievement, health and well-being. It reduces the stigma for children eating in schools, and it reduces the administrative burden for families and for schools. Unfortunately, Congress opted not to continue that nationwide, but the good news is there are a number of states, I think we're up to 6 or 7 now, that have on their own decided to continue providing healthy school meals for all. There's a lot more that are considering it and that are interesting, so a huge opportunity there to really lift it up. USDA we're doing what we can. We have asked Congress to make an additional investment in a somewhat smaller program that allows it in certain communities. We're trying to provide regulatory relief, but really the action is at the state level. So that's one opportunity I would identify. A second is that we are working very hard to improve the nutritional quality of the benefits that these programs deliver. We have proposed some additional updates to standards for school meals. In particular, for the first time, we're going to be tackling the amount of added sugar that we see in those meals, and we're going to be continuing the gradual progress that we've been making for the last 15 years around other key issues like sodium and consumption of fruits and vegetables. We're also proposing for the first time to update the WIC food package that's provided to young parents and children to support their nutritional needs. The headline on that update is that we are greatly expanding the amounts of fruits and vegetables that WIC family can receive. Again, this is something that we tested as a country during the pandemic. Congress authorized this, and we are planning to codify that as a permanent part of the program. And then the third opportunity I wanted to lift up has to do with summer feeding. You know, historically, to coin a phrase of one of our great partners, FRAC, hunger doesn't take a vacation. But we do see that many kids have not traditionally been reached with nutrition assistance in the summer. Only about 20% of the kids that receive free and reduced price meals obtain summer meals. Congress actually gave us 2 wonderful new tools to address this year. First, starting next summer, we're going to be able to provide EBT cards with resources to families who have kids who receive free and reduced price meals to help supplement their buying power in the summer. And then secondly, we are now able to expand our existing summer feeding program, which has historically required kids to come together in programmatic settings and actually consume meals. Now we are able to, in rural areas, allow meals to be dropped off or delivered to their homes. So a really, I think, historic opportunity to better serve kids during the summer months. And those are just 3 of the real opportunities we have. So we are very much looking forward to continuing to work together and understand how the council can support these critical nutrition programs. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Appreciate it. And then on the end, we have Lauren Ingram from the National Park Service, who's the Associate Director for Partnership and Civic Engagement in the Department of the Interior. Again, if you could offer, again, I think most people would think of the National Park Service as rather far removed from these questions, but we know better, right? And I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. We play a really key role in the work that we're talking about today. And I want to first off thank the council for doing this work and for working with all of us on such important activity and such important guidance to the things that we can do as part of the federal government and in our communities to advance this mission. So thank you for your service, and it's exciting to have you here. And I'm really always thrilled to be able to talk about the work that the National Park Service does to promote health and wellness to all people, as we've been hearing, all has been a really big theme in what we've been talking about today. And we have diverse parks, parks that are, thousands and thousands of acres to really small community parks that we fund through our state grant programs. We also have amazing interpretive work and many valuable, strong partnerships with our colleagues in the federal government and with communities. When we think about national parks, we might think about people taking a hike or connecting with nature or connecting with their history. But parks also provide places just for people to have fun and to find the mental, physical, and spiritual health and well-being that we know is so critical for all of us. One thing you might not know is the justification for parkland creation in the United States really is rooted in public health, both in something called the City Beautiful movement and then also in some other actions to establish national parks. People were seeking clean air, clean water, and safe spaces for respite from the stressors of city living during the Second Industrial Revolution in the early 1900s. So just in 2021, we celebrated our 100th anniversary of a partnership with the U.S. Public Health Service, and that's one of the nation's oldest federal partnerships. So we've been, working hand in hand throughout our organizations on these issues. And over the past few years, that partnership has really adapted to focus on the challenges of our time, modern public health concerns, the effects of climate change, health disparities, ethnic and racial health disparities, chronic disease prevention, as we've been talking about, and then the challenges concerning outdoor accessibility, physical, social, and mental well-being. We know very much so that there is a strong connection with our health and the access to outdoors and green space, and that research is continuing and growing, and we are using that in our public health strategies, utilizing really a One Health approach to improving the health of all the things that we work with. Humans, animals, our environment is really a way to protect and preserve our nation's most precious natural, historical, and cultural treasures. We have a program, Healthy Parks, Healthy People, and our parks and our staff are growing the evidence base and promoting national parks as a resource for all people's physical, mental, and social well-being. We're part of the White House National Strategy on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health, and that strategy has identified the importance of investing in parks as a way to increase equitable access to the outdoors and connect people with physical outdoor opportunities. So we're excited to work with the Council on these ideas, and we would like the Council to think about adding nature and health as an important priority in the work that you do, as well as connecting with nature-based solutions to help with climate change, which is really a health issue as well. So don't want to forget about that. And again, as you think about your work and your work with us, remember we're more than just the physical national parks. We invest in communities through parks, through historic resources, through a myriad of activities in our agency that really connects with all people in the United States. And we're to help you make those connections. And actually, I should flip that around. Hopefully, you can help us make new connections with new organizations and new folks that we really want to hear our message of the importance of outdoor recreation and nature-based play and nature-based connections for physical and mental health. So thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. I particularly like that last comment about making connections because I think these ladies and gentlemen in the Council represent a heck of a force multiplier for all of us in the work that we do. So, Karen, I'm going to come back to you and ask a question. If you could provide us an example of how CDC is collaborating with another federal partner, particularly in support of the national strategy like we've been talking about, and particularly in making spaces easier and safer for physical activity.
Oh, sure. But I think in reality, what you're hearing from all of us is how important the work of each of these agencies is in trying to get to the direction that we're trying to go. So, and I work with a lot of different agencies, both within HHS and external. I spent time at HUD last week. lots of time with CMS, lots of times with HRSA, a whole variety of groups, as well as DOT. One of the things, though, that happens, and I personally understand this experience as a prior, I used to say a recovering local health department director, is that you have to do this construct of blending and braiding. Like, you can't really get the work done if you just go with one grant. You're always aware of what the next opportunity is. One of the things that's actually been really exciting is particularly working recently with Louisiana, where they worked with the Department of Transportation such that 15 rural communities that were all predominantly black counties were actually able to apply for transportation dollars. Now, that may seem like a relatively simple thing, but that's not the kind of thing that you are typically doing if you're in the health sector. Similarly, if you're in the housing sector or if you're in the transportation sector, you don't always know what's going on in the other grants or know even who to partner with, so that you can basically bring those resources in and use them collaboratively. And I think one of the most exciting things is when you start to see these coalitions at the neighborhood and the community levels really pull it together and bring the force of collective action to get work done. And I'm a believer that success breeds success. So that once you are able to do something like that, you're more confident, you get better at it, and guess what? Things start to improve. Money starts to come in, and you're able to do some of the things that you wanted to do. We've recently funded a whole variety of planning grants around social determinants of health, and built environment, for example, is one of the elements that folks can work on, as well as food, and there's a lot of interest in those two areas. But you can't, as I noted earlier, you can't do that by yourself. A health department cannot do it by themselves. They need their local transportation folks. They need their local economic development people. They need their local hospitals. They need their businesses, the private sector, to come together and really focus all of their attention on moving this agenda forward. And I think that's something that the council can really support.
Great, thank you. Absolutely an advocate as well for the idea of looking at community-based needs framed in the social determinants of health as a way of rallying all of us to the cause. It makes it inclusive for all of the different sectors of government and society to entertain their roles. Emily, similar question. What do you see as the greatest opportunity within the Department of Transportation to influence the way environments are in benefiting physical activity?
Thank you for that question. I think one of the major focuses at this time at USDOT is safety, and that's safety across the different modes of transportation. But as it relates to this conversation, an enormous focus on roadway safety. What we've been seeing in this country over the last several years is this terrible increase in serious injuries and fatalities on our roadways, and we have, for that reason, developed the National Roadway Safety Strategy. We have adopted the vision of zero roadway fatalities. We're using the safe system approach to build out redundancies and safety protective measures. These safety efforts are going to have, not on one hand, when our roadways aren't safety, people are not going to be sending their kids to school down the sidewalk or, taking that walk across the 5-lane road to get their groceries. These are really critical issues for us to address as a starting point for making communities more walkable, bikeable, rollable, is that issue around safety. So through the bipartisan infrastructure law, we have a lot of tremendous support and investment that we are putting into safety, including Safe Streets and Roads for All, in which program we're going to be doing a lot of comprehensive safety action planning, which includes a process of stakeholder engagement and planning and committee planning at the local level, which we want to create and support those types of coordination. Additionally, looking at how, as we're thinking through safety, we have other programs that are more invested in building that infrastructure out. And using those, critical criteria around, first, where do we need to be with a data-driven approach? What places should we be sending, resources and support to first? So places that are being disproportionately impacted by the safety crisis, places that have historically, carried a larger portion of the burden, and we're looking at places where, fatality rates are higher, which occur higher in Black and brown communities, occur higher in rural communities, occur higher to people who are outside of vehicles, vulnerable road users, people who are walking, biking, and rolling. So with those considerations, we're designing our programs and our policies in order to improve those conditions, so that we can be supporting with further investment, active transportation, that mode shift, which is going to benefit all of us through many, many different ways, whether it's environmental benefits because we have less exhaust on the roads, whether it's the health benefits of people being able to move more often, economic benefits, as we see there's a lot of arguments around those communities that can create those areas, whether it's the real estate or the business there. And so all of that is something that's under consideration as we're making these investments with this historic amount of funding through the bipartisan infrastructure law. So really being strategic. We're also very clear on our coordination across agencies. Again, here at the federal level, we have the Thriving Communities Initiative. We're looking at ways we can support local governments, local communities, to be able to access these programs that we have, but not only from the Department of Transportation, but to be able to coordinate across different programs. So providing that technical assistance that a lot of communities need to understand what funds are available, how to braid those funds together, and how maybe a transportation project will actually result in a benefit to your physical activity, your nutrition goals, et cetera. So trying to really pull in all of those pieces together here at this level, but again, really thinking clearly on the importance of that coordination at the local level, local, regional, state, et cetera, and trying to facilitate all of those conversations. And again, I would emphasize, the issue around land use and how we continue to build places is really going to define how we use places. So being intentional about those decisions is really critical. We have this opportunity, and we're definitely being very, very intentional around that.
Great, thank you, Emily. Really appreciate it. Cindy, you had mentioned school meals, and we know that school meals are an enormous benefit to over 30 million children in this country. I was wondering if maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on how the President's Council in particular and the various roles that they may have can help reach schools and communities to expand on the benefit and that strategic advantage that school meals really play out there.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I'd be happy to do that. I think sort of the first order of, there's a few things, but I think kind of the first order of business is really to help us get the word out about how that school meals are healthy and delicious. I think that when you say school lunch, there's sometimes folks don't necessarily have that image, and it's just really important to help folks understand that things may have changed a lot since what they may remember from their youth. So really just helping to do that. I think I mentioned before, we know from the research that school meals are among the healthiest meals that a child can get during the day. So any opportunities you have when you're out in your communities, visit a school, maybe, put out on social media pictures of the lunch and how terrific it is and how the kids are enjoying it. Maybe lift up innovative things that schools are doing to develop healthy connections between kids and food. There are lots of schools with things like, beautiful gardening curriculum, other kind of farm to school activities, innovative nutrition education, things that really engage the kids, whether it's maybe like a recipe contest that they can participate in. There's a lot of good things going on, and I think it's just critically important to get the word out there in whatever means that you have available to you. Another thing that I think could be extremely beneficial for this council in particular to do is to lift up that link between good nutrition and fitness, and in particular sports. I've been in this nutrition assistance game for a long time, and I've really seen some interesting ways that kids connect to this, and sports is a really big motivator. I remember having the opportunity to go to a school event with middle schoolers with a professional football player. And, you know, they were so excited to see him. And the first sentence he said was, "The day that I became a professional athlete, I became a professional eater." And, you know, I think that just really resonated with the kids. I remember visiting another school where I believe it was their football team had won the regional championship, and that happened around the same time they had a new director for school nutrition come in and totally revamp their programs, make them healthier, more appealing, more kids were participating. And the coach, you know, specifically, and he always emphasized this in talking to local media, he really saw that as a significant part of the team's success, that they had the opportunity to be well-nourished every single day. The third thought I have is something a little more specific, and that's some activities at USDA that I think there will be opportunities for you all to be engaged in. Under Secretary Vilsack's leadership, we have made a $100 million investment in something we're calling the Healthy Meals Initiative. And that includes a number of different activities to really support schools in serving healthy meals and having overall environments that support nutrition. So we are doing things like making grants to small and rural schools who need some help to revamp their programs. We are instituting, starting this fall, a recognition program to really lift up and recognize schools that are meeting really high standards or that have come through some barriers and are achieving progress. We are investing in projects to help support the school meals marketplace, to help make sure that when schools are out there looking for healthy foods that they can menu, they can find them. And then lastly, we're planning a series of summits and events to lift up all of this work. So I think that opportunity provides some specific places where the council and individual members might be able to have opportunities. So, and we are happy to work with you and share those opportunities going forward. So, thank you.
Great, thank you, Cindy. Lauren, you had mentioned the way in which the National Park Service is couched under some of the tenets in the national strategy that we've realized just this past year. Can you elaborate on what you think the greatest strength is in the National Park Service in executing on some of those goals, and perhaps how the President's Council can play to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. And as I was discussing earlier, we really have this long history of promoting, improving, and protecting health and well-being through our work at the National Park Service, and we're really recognized for that, both with our federal partners here and as well as externally by partners, because we have these great public connections. You know, we can talk to people about the things that are underlying some of our health crises, climate change, chronic disease, the mental health crisis, things related to COVID-19. So I think really the biggest strength that we bring to this work is that we are America's backyard, both in, again, the investments that we make in communities and then in our wonderful national park system that reaches so many people. We have parks in every state, and we have over 300 million visits every year, and then we have the many programs that we do that extend that benefit to thousands of communities across the country annually to help support people in their healthy lifestyles. Our National Park Service staff is also a really, not a hidden treasure, a treasure of people who are wonderful at delivering messages, sharing critical knowledge and curriculums with folks of all ages, emphasizing the importance of our natural environment, the importance of STEM, social science, and health and wellness. So we're really uniquely positioned then to extend the messages that we're talking about here around healthy eating, physical activity, getting people out in the parks and enjoying them, and taking those lessons through our interpretive work and our connections with the public. We're also really able to pivot quickly because we have such a deep bench of wonderful educators, and we've been able to provide timely and relevant messaging, you know, most recently through the issues that we've addressed through the COVID-19 pandemic, really able to reach people where they are and provide them with detailed information. And I think we can do that in concert with you all around physical activity and the connection with the outdoors. We also do work with communities in planning, design, and community capacity development. and ways we can actually partner with the Department of Transportation on helping to implement great design in communities is something that we work on through our programs. And as I mentioned, we implement and fund through our state partners close to home recreation, everything from a playground to a ball field. You start looking around your community and you'll see the signs for the support from the National Park Service in so many community parks, thousands and thousands and thousands of them that we have invested in. So we're able to reach everyone, I guess is what I'm saying, rural, urban, visitors through these community programs. And so using us to help carry this message, giving us ideas about ways to carry the message is, I think, a really great way that we can partner with the council, and we're excited to do that.
Thank you, Lauren. And I'm going to go on the record and say I'm going to go for a hike in the woods this weekend, by the way. Okay?
All right, excellent.
So, I want to respect time, but I do want to turn to my staff and ask if we have an opportunity for the council members to ask questions of the panelists. Do we have a minute or two? Yeah. Are there any questions for the panelists? Yes, please.
I guess this is for all of you. If you could have us direct our attention to one issue or two issues, what would we be working on?
I have a mic, I'm pulling it up. I think access is one of the critical issues, and I think that, that from where we all sit in our different places and spaces, that access is being able to safely get to what you need to have a prosperous, healthy life. And so it's being able to get to school, being able to get to that grocery store or the farmer's market, and having those choices. So for me, if I had one word to say, it would be access. And again, that would paint the whole story around, in the case of transportation, one of our programs, Reconnecting Communities, is looking at how historically we have divided communities with transportation projects. And we are focusing on redressing those harms and seeing what is the path forward and rebuilding, reconnecting, and creating access for communities. So that is my contribution.
And I'll go one step further and say resources, because if you've got access, you better have the resources there to have the access too. And I think what we're seeing now is we are getting much more engaged in trying to identify social needs and things like that, is that we have communities that just don't have those resources. So if there isn't a place to be physically active, to get the access to get there, I think that's the area that we're most concerned about. We're at CDC, we're very focused on the question of what are the needs to create an environment where health can take place. And I think that includes all of these pieces, but it's really thinking about how does that availability make the difference.
And if I could add, and I think this very much complements access, is awareness. I think that looking at it from the nutrition perspective, there are still far, far too many Americans who just aren't aware of the resources that are available from the federal government to support a healthy diet, including our programs.
And I'll second that access, but add, of course, access to parks, parks that are convenient to people, convenient to the other resources that we're talking about here today, walkable communities, all those things that help people be more physically active and access healthy food.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, I want to thank our panelists. You all have been terrific. I certainly hope for the council members' sake, you saw the framing, the couching of the current approach and perspective that the federal government is taking, and particularly the collaboration that we seek amongst the various departments and agencies across the government. I've been in government going on 30 years, and I've never known it to be more collaborative than it is today. We need to take advantage of that. We need to take advantage of the synergy that's represented between and amongst our various agencies. And I think the partnership that you all represent into that as that force multiplier, like I said, I think would be enormously valuable. Let's just review it again. Access, resources, and awareness. Okay, thank you. I am going to welcome Sherry Siapka. Where did she go? There she is. Sherry Siapka is the interim director for the National Fitness Foundation, and we have loved having her on board these, how many weeks now? 4 weeks. And she's going to introduce you to the NFF and its relationship to our office and to the President's Council. It's all yours.
Thank you. You can go to the next slide, please. And the next one. Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Sherry Siapka. I am the National Fitness Foundation Interim Executive Director. One of my very favorite things to do in the last several weeks since I have been associated with the NFF is to ask everybody I know, do they remember the President's Fitness Challenge or the President's Fitness Test? And without fail, everybody says yes. They nod their heads yes, and they have a story to tell about it. Some remember it very fondly, and others not so much. I began exercising with my mother in her bedroom to the original Jane Fonda workout on VCR. That is actually my tape. That is my own photo. I still have that VHS. I was a cheerleader in high school, but cheerleading was not exactly the athletic sport that it is today, and you can see I'm actually wearing old-fashioned saddle shoes and not sneakers. I was one of those people that do not really remember the President's Test very fondly. In fact, I was actually terrified of running. That feeling of my heart beating through my chest when I ran actually made me believe I was going to die, truly. And I was not one of those people who received a patch, so congratulations to those who did. I did not. I was afraid of competition, I never felt like a real athlete, and I had a poor body image. In fact, one day I remember when it was raining, our PE class ran through the hallways of the high school, and there were a couple of boys sitting by their lockers, and as I ran by in my shorts, I heard one of them say, "Thunder thighs," and it was not meant as a compliment. That was 35 years ago, and I still remember it obviously clearly to this day. So why am I now representing the National Fitness Foundation as the executive director and an ambassador for youth fitness? So when I was in my late 40s, I was at the gym, and a trainer turned to me and he said, "Hey, you're an athlete. Go get a heavier weight." Me? And that one simple gesture from this encouraging coach changed my mentality completely. And he helped me to see my strength and my abilities as athleticism, and I began utilizing competition as a tool to track my progress and my fitness, and it has driven me to my highest levels of fitness. So now, at 51, as an adult competitive athlete, I strive to inspire others by demonstrating what can be possible at all ages. So now I have embraced these thunder thighs very proudly, and I say, look at what they can do. They propelled me up 104 floors of the World Trade Center in 20 minutes, winning first place in my age group. This was last summer. I leap over hurdles in fitness competitions, and just a couple of weeks ago, I heaved a 60-pound bucket of rocks up a hill in a Spartan race, 5Ks and 20 obstacles. That trainer, that encouragement, and that gym that day changed my life. So once upon a time when I thought I actually might die if I ran too fast, now my mental, emotional, physical, and my well-being overall depend on it. Now I would die if I didn't do it. My deepest desire is to help all youth to show up for physical fitness and nutrition and ask themselves, what if I can? And to discover with joy the physical activity that they were built for. So my personal slogan with the National Fitness Foundation is, show up with Sherry. So now I'll tell you a little bit more about the foundation. We can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so what is the connection between the NFF, the President's Council, and the ODPHP? Since 1956, the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition has worked to engage, educate, and empower all Americans to adopt a healthy lifestyle that includes regular physical activity and good nutrition. The President's Council is a federal advisory committee appointed by the President and established through executive order, as we heard earlier. The Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion manages the President's Council. Congress created the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion in 1976 to lead the nation's disease prevention and health promotion efforts on behalf of the United States Department of Health and Human Services. As a part of the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Health, the ODPHP works closely with other HHS agencies, with committed national partners and organizations that span sectors to encourage all Americans to lead healthy lives. Next slide, please. So the National Fitness Foundation came into public law 111332, signed in 2010 by President Obama. It has 9 board members appointed by the Secretary of Health and Human Services for 6-year terms, and it currently has 5 ex officio board members. Next slide, please. The National Fitness Foundation mission is dedicated to creating a healthier America, starting with our nation's most valuable asset, our youth. We support the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition and partner with the public and private sector to develop and fund national programs that promote youth fitness, nutrition, and physical and mental health. The NFF is nonpartisan and was congressionally chartered with bipartisan support. It was created by the federal government, but it is an independent 501c3 nonprofit. The legislation directs the foundation to collaborate with the President's Council to identify strategic priorities for furthering the purposes and functions of the President's Council, and to cultivate private and public partnerships that encourage investments in the achievement of those strategic priorities. Next slide, please. I am joined by a fantastic National Fitness Foundation board: Judy Brown Clark, Scott Goodson, Elizabeth Coons, Boris Luzniak, Michael McConnell, Suzanne McCormick, Damon Phillips, and James Siegel. Judy, Scott, and Michael and James are here. If you haven't had an opportunity to meet them yet, please do so during the break. And the next slide, please. And our ex officio members: Admiral Rachel Levine, Rachel Fisher, Gary Gibbons, Karen Hacker, and Rochelle Walensky. As you know, Admiral Levine is here, Rachel Fisher is here, and Karen Hacker are here. I have not yet met Gary Gibbons and Rochelle Walensky, so if they are here, I do hope to meet them, and I hope that you will meet all these other folks as well. Next slide, please. The Presidential Youth Fitness Program, as it is now called, is meant to equip youth to be fit for life. So the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition has promoted physical fitness since the 1960s. In 2012, the President's Challenge Youth Fitness, as most of us remember it, was reformulated into the Presidential Youth Fitness Program. And it shifted the emphasis from performance-based assessment to a health-focused assessment. It was designed as a program that would include a health-related assessment and educational and motivational tools to support educators and empower students to adopt an active lifestyle. Youth would be recognized for achieving a healthy level across 5 health categories. And the PYFP included trainings and tools that physical educators could use to conduct these health-related fitness assessments. Next slide, please. So yesterday, we had a fantastic meeting. It was the Presidential Youth Fitness Program stakeholder meeting. We invited organizations with an interest and who are currently working in promotion of youth activity, youth physical activity or fitness, to help us reimagine the Presidential Youth Fitness Program for the 21st century and beyond. Key discussion topics: where have we been with the program? Why is it so important that we reimagine it now? And we've heard some of the startling statistics on youth obesity, our lack of military and workforce readiness, and the mental health issues that our youth face today. We received some research on some ideas that we should possibly take. We had youth input, and some of those youth are here with us today, and I see them in the audience right now. And let me tell you, they stole the show. They really encouraged us as we reimagined the program to make it social, so they're doing it along with their friends and having fun, but still keep it a little competitive for those who enjoy that. And I enjoy that now myself, too. And we had a lot of audience input from the organizations that were with us. And I tell you, I wrote these things down before you asked the question of the panel earlier. The 3 key focus areas that I walked away with: accessibility, design for inclusion for all, make it scalable. We need to find a way to make this program free and available to all kids, no matter where they are, in schools and within other distribution channels or at home with their families. And 3, we also had heard awareness. We need a culture change. We need to elevate the importance of physical and mental fitness with a rally cry in this nation. Next slide, please. So thank you to all the organizations who participated in our stakeholder meeting yesterday, either in person or virtually. It was about 75 or so representatives from all of these different companies, from technology, education, the healthcare fields, national nonprofits, government entities, and so much more. We left that meeting feeling completely invigorated and ready to roll up our sleeves. Next slide, please. So to keep us moving forward, you have heard a little bit already today about the National Strategy on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health and the national conference that was held in September of 2022, with the goal to end hunger and increase healthy eating and physical activity by 2030, so fewer Americans experience diet-related conditions like diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. The National Fitness Foundation wants to be the owner of Pillar 4, support physical activity for all. Next slide. In the White House Challenge, we specifically have asked private companies and philanthropic groups to consider training physical education teachers to help implement national PE standards and support youth in being physically active, and providing financial and technical support to schools, such as through the Presidential Youth Fitness Program. We're asking states and local educational agencies and school administrators are encouraged to support children's wellness by investing in professional development of PE teachers, committing more time to PE, including before and after school, and using evidence-based strategies that are equitable, accessible, and inclusive, such as, for example, a tribal sports or games or other non-traditional sports. The National Fitness Foundation will include all founding funders and key partners within our commitment to the White House for their challenge to reimagine the Presidential Youth Fitness Program and to carry out the strategic priorities of the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. We will be your megaphone, and we hope that you will be our megaphone. So on behalf of the National Fitness Foundation, congratulations on your appointments, and we look forward to collaborating with you. Thank you. And real quick before I get off the stage, a public service announcement. We are looking for an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer to join our team that will focus full-time on reimagining the Presidential Youth Fitness Program with us. So if you know somebody in mind, please go ahead, take a screenshot of the QR code, and hopefully they'll apply. Thank you so much.
Well, I'm just here to announce that it's break time. So thank you so much, Sherry, for your presentation, and we will resume at 3:20. Thank you.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.